With you, Bianca.
All right. First, if we can talk about, before we go internationally, if we can stay domestically, we know Mar-a-Lago has had a lot of meetings. Let's talk about this spending bill. Donald Trump has said the president wants one bill. John Thune and some have suggested to break it into two. And I ask you because, obviously the goal is to get Donald Trump's agenda forward. Would one bill be more advantageous than two, though, just to get it all done and get it to his desk, especially with that razor-thin majority in the House, Jason?
Yeah, and what President Trump has said is that he prefers to have one bill, but there are a number of different ways to do this. There could be two bills, and they're talk about how you want to split this up. Do you take on the border first, or you put it all together? But here's the big picture thing of what the president's trying to do, which is re-up the Trump tax cuts, but also make good on these additional tax cut promises he made, such as no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime pay. That will take a little bit of time to develop and put together. So the president said he wants it done. He wants it quick. He wants it on his desk so he can sign it. But ultimately, the House and the Senate will need to come together and figure out how they're going to get this done as quickly as possible.
We know that there has to be some movement, maybe decision in the next week or so before the draft of the bill or bills could be made. So do you think in the next few days we could get clarity on where that is, whether it be one or two, Jason?
Well, potentially. And again, obviously, President Trump is going to have his input here, but also he'll be meeting with folks in Senate leadership, as well as I'm sure he'll see folks in House leadership when he's in Washington tomorrow. But this is something that Congress needs to work through as well, because these things are complex when you go and put it together. And also keep in mind that there's some bigger picture ideas that are going into this, including what the president is going to be implementing is with regard to tariffs and additional trade aspects that will go and help our economy, protect American workers and American industries. But this isn't just a unilateral decision from the president. We have to have both the House and the Senate bought in. So again, he's made it clear that he wants to have one bill, but he would be open to having two if we can get that done. So I imagine we're going to see movement on this pretty quick. But keep in mind the tax writing component of this does need to start with the House Ways and Means Committee. That's Chairman Jason Smith. And so we got to get moving, because if we don't get that done by the end of the year, obviously there would be a rather negative ramification of that. But we already have the markets that are looking at this. We have the CEO optimism, the small business optimism. We have all this global investment coming into the U.S. based on the promises of lower taxes. And also, Bianca, don't forget about the 10-to-1 commitment to get rid of regulations, getting rid of 10 regulations for every one new regulation that get puts on the books. And so this is what's going to go and turn the economy around and lift everybody up. So we have to get it done. And I have confidence that the president, with a Republican Senate and a Republican House, will be able to get this done.
We'll be watching things closely down there. Now let's talk about some of the news he just made. Canada, we don't need their products. We know Trudeau is leaving. And it's not just Canada. Now there's a lot of questions with Greenland. Don Jr. is there, and I see on his media and social media, he's got like a lot of folks there surrounding him with cameras. One of the questions just asked at Mar-a-Lago from the reporters, Jason, was, can you assure us you won't do economic or military to try and take over Greenland or the Panama Canal? So obviously curious legacy media wondering what Donald Trump's plan is. But give us some visibility on what it may look like. He says we need Greenland. He flat out said it. We need Greenland. And he is interested in actually pursuing Panama Canal, saying that, Panama's handed this over to China, and there might be perhaps a treaty that there's something they've violated. That's what he was alluding to.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, that I'd point out is that finally we have a president back in the White House, or soon to be in the White House. We have a couple more weeks until we actually get him there, I guess 13 more days if you're scoring at home, who's taking that macro geopolitical viewpoint into both our national security and our national sovereignty, but also with our national economy, and also things such as how we're going to protect our borders. And keep in mind, the world's a much different place now than it was even 4 years ago or 8 years ago, going further back. The Arctic Circle, as we take a look at it, this is now a major shipping lane, and it's a place where we see the Russians becoming more aggressive. We see the Chinese becoming more aggressive. And so the world looks a lot different. And for the past 4 years, we've had a leader in the White House with Joe Biden, who, to say that he's had his head in the sand would probably be a rather positive way of saying it. We've had just gross incompetence. So what President Trump is doing is saying, OK, let's look at the major security issues that we have. we need to have control of the Panama Canal. And that's, we shouldn't have given it over in the first place. The president's been very consistent on that, talked about that even back during his first term. We also, Greenland is something that we should be controlling. And so there are a number of things that are in play here, both on security. Also keep in mind with regard to Canada, we are going to have some additional negotiations when it comes to the USMCA, as the window for those negotiations are popping up to make sure that we're being protected, particularly with the U.S. auto industry. And so President Trump has been ready for this. He's been president before. He knows exactly what he wants to do on day one. And he's starting to put the chess pieces in place so he can look all these different things. And keep in mind,
Jason,
under President Trump, he's really used trade as a soft power to be able to move other countries to benefit American workers and the American economy.
And Jason, while this news conference was happening, you talk about, who we've had in the White House the past 4 years, never really capable of doing a, freestyle news conference like we've seen in the past under Donald Trump, and what the incoming president, Donald Trump's able to do. Breaking right there is the Judge Cannon order. So she is effectively blocking Jack Smith from releasing a final report here. Donald Trump has also spoken about how the respect he was shown to him when he traveled to France and when people come to Mar-a-Lago, all the leaders, Maloney over the weekend. I wanted to get your reaction on Cannon's order with Jack Smith, but I also had a thought, too, that part of the respect that's being shown to him, doesn't this, you think, play into the fact that New York Judge Juan Merchan is so desperate to try and sentence him, to label him a convicted felon before inauguration, Jason?
Well, I think you're onto something there. And I think the only people who haven't quite grasped the fact that President Trump received 77 million votes and 312 electoral votes and won the popular vote outright are some of these rogue judicial actors. And what Judge Cannon did today was really an extension of when she dismissed the case in the first place, saying that Smith was operating in an unlawful fashion. And for Smith and the Biden DOJ, the very highly politicized Biden DOJ, to keep trying to push forward with this case in Florida shows that, again, they're pushing aside the rule of law. Judge Cannon has already ruled here. And instead, what we're seeing from Merrick Garland and Jack Smith is they're trying to keep the election going. Bianca, the American people have voted. They've made their opinions very clear. They realize this is all, they've said definitively, this is all a bunch of political nonsense. They want to see our economy turned around. They want to see the border secured.
Do you think Merchan will go through with it? I'm sorry, we're just a little tight on time. Your boss, if you will, we wanted to hear from him. But do you think Merchan, a judge, will stop this from going forward? Because you're right, it has been activist judges and even this appellate court in New York. Is there still any faith with this last-ditch ruling today that it can be stopped? And if not, final thoughts on if that does happen, Jason?
Well, we have a very excellent legal team, of course, led by incoming Deputy AG Todd Blanche and Emil Bove and the other folks who are doing that. And I think their filings obviously influence what Judge Cannon did, and I think are really turning a lot of heads, and people are paying attention there. I would never go and predict what a radical left-wing, politically oriented judge in New York is going to do. I'll leave that to the legal team to go and predict that. But it is very clear that this is all politics. And President Trump, quite frankly, said it all the way along. He said all the way through the show trial that we had in New York, that this is politics. It was all driven by the Biden DOJ, and everyone sees exactly what's going on. But you know what? Let's get President Trump inaugurated. Let's get him sworn in. Let's turn our country around. And enough of the politicized DOJ, enough of the politicized FBI. That's why we need Pam Bondi and Kash Patel in there to get this country turned around.
Oh, we have a lot of topics today, and quite an agenda we know is on his plate in the next few days in regards to what's happening. Jason Miller, a pleasure to have you.